Hi everyone, welcome to a brand new collection of scary stories. Share your thoughts in the comments and don't forget to subscribe. Enjoy. My dad's never been the same since his trip. When my mom died, it was rough on everyone, especially my dad, which was to be expected, but it hit him harder than anyone thought it would. Mom had a good, cushy government job, and her old co-workers saw dad was struggling, so they offered him a job. After that, life began to get better, but life never felt the same. There was always a heavy dread in the house when it got quiet. Maybe a year or two into Dad's new job, he said he was gonna go on a work trip for a week or two, nothing crazy. The 2 weeks went by perfectly fine, nothing spooky, nothing to write a story about. But when Dad came home is when things were different. I didn't notice anything at first, just thought he was feeling down or just a little stiff from the plane ride. But after a month, I couldn't ignore the oddities in his life. It may seem nitpicking, but it was very small things. The way he held his fork, what he put in his daily coffee, not wanting to go to his childhood friends' get togethers anymore. So one night, I brought it up to him. Dad, you been feeling okay? Of course, champ, haven't felt better, he said in a overly cheery attitude. You sure you've just been acting odd since you came back from that work trip? After I said that, my dad's smile plummeted into a stiff, emotionless stare. What do you mean, champ? He said champ as if it were a threat. Never mind. I'm kinda full. I think I'm gonna go finish my homework. Dad just stared at me. As I stood up to go up to my room, I kept looking back to see if he would at least acknowledge me leaving. When I got to the stairs, I looked back towards him. Good night, Dad. He twitched his eye towards me and slowly turned his neck as if it was forced. Love ya. After I said that, Dad went back to eating dinner, the same stiff grip he had on the fork since I brought up his change. After that dinner, nothing much happened. Life was more normal than before. Even Dad started to act normal again, but one day he changed again. I walked downstairs, packed my lunch, was ready to go to school, and before I left, Dad started to talk. See you later, champ. Have a good day at school. Which wasn't out of the ordinary. He normally said goodbye to me before school, but when he said it, he was staring straight out the kitchen window, not even tilting his head towards me. So I just walked out the door and started walking to school, but when I looked back at the house, he was just in the window, staring at me with that happy, go-get-'em smile like you see in 1950s Trad Wife magazine. Later that night was my breaking point. I woke up to take a drink from my water glass when I noticed there was a gray pillar in my room. Then I focused more into it, then realized my door was cracked open. And then finally I saw my dad. He was staring at me through the crack in the door, just wide enough for me to see his eye and the edge of the smile he had on his face. Dad? I said. Dad, what are you doing? He stood there, unresponsive for minutes, then he said, just checking up on you, champ. The response isn't what scared me. It's the fact his mouth didn't move when he said it. That flat smile with only the edges curving up never flinched so a word could squeak out. After he said that, he slowly stepped back away from the door, but didn't close it. Then I saw his hand creep towards the door handle and grip the handle so tightly I either thought it would bend or break his hand. Then he closed the door with the slightest tick. After he closed the door, I could hear him breathing outside my door very steadily. I didn't sleep at all that night. When the sun came up, I could see his shadow sitting in front of my door. I packed my stuff, messaged my friend, and picked up and hauled ass through the front door. I could hear my dad yelling, Champ, come on, champ, you don't need to do this. I didn't look back once and leaped into my friend's car before Dad could sprint out the house towards the car with both of his fists clenched like they were stones. I've officially moved out from my dad's house since every major holiday I get a holiday card that reads like, come for some family fun, champ. I've never gone, and I don't have plans to ever see my dad or what's left of him ever again. My girlfriend keeps calling to me from every day. She calls out for me from the guest bedroom, asking me to come to her. Every day, without fail, I refuse. Some days I don't even answer when she asks why. Some days I don't even come home anymore. For the last 2 years, as soon as I get home from work, as soon as I wake up like clockwork, she beckons me. It's become exhausting. There were days I thought about moving, just packing my bags and leaving, starting a new life. Maybe I should have just done that in the first place. It's not like she would have been able to stop me. I guess it's too late for that now. It would probably have only made things worse for me in the end. I guess I've already made all the hard choices a long time ago. Just coming to terms with that has been the hard part. I was afraid of judgment, of ridicule. I guess I still am. But I just can't stand the sound of her voice anymore. The woman I once loved became just an echo coming from down the hall. I'm ashamed, I truly am. But I can't change anything now. I can't change the past or the future, apparently, not even the present. I tried for as long as I could, for 2 damn years, but eventually it just became too much. Everyone has their breaking point, and ours has long since passed. To me, she was just a memory, a glimpse of what should have been. Yet every time she called out to me, I was reminded of what she was. She was desperate not to be forgotten. She yearned for acknowledgement, for my response. Still, I offered none. Her pleas for my attention, for my validation went unnoticed, unrecognized. I simply did not possess the heart to grant her the response she sought. Even if I did, I knew it would offer her no resolve. There was no peace for her now. No amount of recognition or accountability could ever be enough to satisfy her. How could it be? Nothing can change what has been said, what has been done, and what will likely happen now. Every day, my girlfriend called out to me from the guest bedroom, and every day I gave no response, until today. Today, when her voice called out to me, it wasn't coming from the guest bedroom anymore. Her voice now beckons me from outside my bedroom door, asking the same questions, seeking the same acknowledgement. I think I know what will happen when she gets it, but it's apparent to me now that she'll stop at nothing until she hears it, until I finally face her once and for all and give her the answers she's been seeking for 2 long years, until she finally knows why I killed her. I haven't seen my dad in 10 years. Now he's standing at my window. Why now? What could be so important that he'd now, somehow, some way, find me here after all this time? I've moved no less than 4 times in the last decade, each time to a new state: New York, Vegas, LA. Last time I saw him was at our old trailer in Crenshaw County, Alabama, when I was just 18. Yet, against all odds, he stands here, over 2,500 miles away, and over 10 years later, in Tacoma, Washington, at 3:39 a.m., tapping on my window. I had even changed my name. As soon as I could afford it, I got it changed. I didn't want his last name anymore. What good is a legacy if it's spent looking for purpose at the bottom of a bottle? I've heard of drinking away your past, but he managed to drink away his future in the process. The name change was a start, but it was far from catharsis. Even without the name, I still carried his burdens, the weight of his failures, his shortcomings, and, by proxy, of a tainted bloodline. I was an embodiment of that shame and guilt. The scars I bear were a constant reminder of that: burned scars from smoldering cigarettes, welts and bruises from thrown bottles, lacerations so deep it still feels like they've been bleeding for over a decade. He wasn't a large man, but when he swung his belt, hell, it felt like that belt was big enough to hold up the pants of Goliath himself. God, how I longed to be his David. So much anger and hatred, so many years of abuse and alcoholism. For what? For bad attitudes and smart remarks? For not knowing better? How could I when my mentor was always either possessed by a violent bloodlust or one sip away from complete liver failure? For running away, away from him, away from the shambles and broken pieces of a dream of a normal family, a dream he robbed me of? It wasn't me. It was never me. It was him. Always him. It took me longer than I'd have liked, but I had come to terms with that. I had finally let go of the past, of the trauma, of the guilt, until now, until I laid eyes on him again, standing, silent and still, outside my bedroom window. The emotions came in waves: anger, sadness, shame, self-reproach, but they fleeted as quickly as they came, except one. the feeling that roosted itself deep within my chest, that clawed at the back of my throat, quelling any sound that sought escape, was morbid intrigue. You see, I know now why he's come. I know who he is and what he wants. What I'm not sure of, however, is how. I'm not sure how, because I know where. I know where I buried him 10 years ago. The monster in the closet spoke to my son. Dad, he's back, my son said, gripping his blanket like his last defensive measure. With a flick, the room sprang to life. The ceiling fan cast its holy light, reducing the darkness to nothing but a few stubborn shadows. Robots, cars, and brickmen littered the floor like a battlefield. Compared to them, I was a giant, and James was their puppeteer, or at least he usually was. Hey, buddy, let me show you no one's there. Like a performance practiced over and over, I opened the closet and walked inside. I showed him again that there was nothing more than graphic tees and light-up sketchers. James pulled down his blankets so I could see him slowly shaking his head. I took a breath to speak. James let go of one hand on the blanket and put one finger on his lips. None of this was uncommon for us, routine enough that you could call it a hobby. I slowly crept up to his bed and took a seat. The bed groaned as it formed a soft crater where I sat. As if the shadows were still too much, I turned on the lamp next to James's bed to chase all the darkness away. I gave his hair a tussle and stroked his cheek, something his mom did all the time. What did he do this time? James grabbed my hand and stopped my caressing. He called me a good boy. The monster only ever breathed or watched. This time was different. He had never spoken before. What does that mean? He said, I'm a good boy, and if I stay quiet, he'll show me the fun place. I scanned the room with my eyes, the floor, the closet, the door, anywhere to try to see what James meant. My eyes drew back to him when he whispered, Dad, we need to go now. Why? Whatever you do, don't listen to him. James started rubbing himself as if he were cold. He looked down, then instantly looked to his right toward the wall. The noise of the light bulbs filled the room as James burned whatever he was staring at. What is it? James, what's wrong? Without looking away, he motioned for me to move aside. I slowly removed myself from his bed, the crater filling itself as I left. James swung his hands wildly like a blind man trying to make sense of his surroundings. I understood and caught his hand. Even though he was so small, his squeeze felt so strong. He allowed me to guide him as he crawled out of his bed. His movements made the blankets shift like waves in an ocean as he pushed them off him. My gaze from my son broke, and I was now attempting to track what he saw. Nothing. The light of the lamp now felt too revealing. Now it was just James and I stepping further from his bed and closer to the door. I began looking straight at the floor, avoiding the lifeless toys. The only sound that now filled the room was the peeling of my bare feet from the hardwood. With every step, the darkness that was past the door grew closer. The light that once brought protection was the thing we were sneaking away from now. Creak, the wood panel spoke, echoing through the room. Then I heard what James was watching. A knock tapped the wall. Not from us, but from the wall. The air clogged my throat. I looked down to see James's eyes fixed on where the knock came from. A small whisper escaped from him as he looked up at me. Dad, it's the monster. Crash wood splintered and surrounded my face as two holes appeared in our wall. Two pale arms slid through the holes. My grip on James slipped as he was tugged back by the arms that sprouted out. One hand covered his face while another arm wrapped around his body, and he was pulled into the wall. Now, alongside the two holes was a James-sized silhouette. I charged at the wall, ready to see the outside of our house. Instead of going forward, I went down. My back cracked against the floor. I spat out the filth in my mouth and reached for a wall as I got up. Instead of drywall or wood, I felt the packed earth seep under my nails, and I examined my surroundings. I had entered the belly of some colossal worm. I looked behind me. The tunnel stretched infinitely into darkness. James! My scream reverberated down the brown labyrinth. Dad! Shh! He was cut off by the muffling of the hands. I quickly turned around and sprinted, following where James's voice came from. I went further and further into the darkness. My bare feet squished worms and were cut by small, jagged rocks until I reached a fork in the tunnel. James, where are you? No response. I ran to the left, sprinting as my back stabbed me with pain. I kept running and running, and then I hit it. Dead end. I looked up and every which way to see if he snuck away. Nothing. I ran back to where I came from, crashing into the wall from where they must have gone. My back was begging for the running to end, and I got a break when I saw light, moonlight. There was a ladder leading outside. I leaped on it, climbing as fast as I could, and looked at where I was. The forest. The forest was too vast for me to chase them. I yelled at James over and over again, but no answer ever came. I sprinted back home and called the police. They came a while ago and I told them the whole story. They searched until sunrise. They never found any holes or tunnels underneath my house, just the holes in my son's room. They promised to come back with a bigger search party, but they haven't yet. I have called everyone I know, and so has my wife, but we have no leads. I am writing this now in the hope that I may help some parents. If the monster in the closet ever starts talking to your child, believe them. I finally watched my missing partner's body. I've been on the force for about 5 years now. I'm not a veteran by any means, but I'm not necessarily a rookie either. I think I've earned my right to say I've seen some things. A lot of homicides, tons of domestic violence, found the remains of missing children on 3 separate occasions, but that's a story for another day. No, the story I want to tell today started a few weeks ago. I was out of town for a funeral, leaving my partner alone for a few days until I could get back to work. In that time, I guess I don't know what happened. He was here one day, gone the next, and the only evidence he left behind was body cam footage. There was no body to retrieve the footage from, but thankfully all of that footage gets sent to our internal system. Sometimes cameras are destroyed, sometimes they malfunction, sometimes the person wearing it is never seen again. Unfortunately, it can take a few days before the footage is fully uploaded into our system. It becomes a game of patience, waiting, letting your imagination run wild. We didn't get to see that footage until my partner had already been missing for 3 days. He was already dead for all we knew. Maybe killed by someone he booked in the past. Maybe by some wannabe gangbanger with something to prove. Like I said, imaginations run wild. When I got the call from my chief down at the station, he sounded more confused than anything, not frantic, not grief-stricken, confused. He told me they finally got the footage, but that's all he said. Well, that, and for me to meet him down at the station. I geared up and made my way downtown, anticipating what was on that footage the entire time. Why was the chief so scarce with the details? I arrived at the station fully convinced that I was prepared for whatever showed up on that screen. When I walked in, the station was unusually empty, unusually quiet. The reason for the vacancy soon became apparent when I found nearly everybody in one room, gathered around a computer screen. We were waiting for you to show up, my chief announced. We couldn't start without his partner present. I took my seat, gesturing for the chief to play the footage. The first few moments were completely normal. My partner approached what seemed to be an abandoned warehouse. He didn't speak into his walkie. He walked briskly, almost running. According to the chief, nobody knew why he was there. There were no calls, no reports of dispatch. He was just there, speed walking into the building. He seemed to know exactly where he was heading. He entered, made a left, made a right, another left. Finally, he found himself standing at another door. The only light came from my partner's flashlight. The room was pitch black, but once he pushed the door open, we saw what true darkness looked like. It was like his flashlight was a $2 toy from the dollar store. The beam illuminated only what was in front of him, and what was in front of him just so happened to be a staircase. He began to descend with the same urgency in which he entered the building, but as time went on, his steps began to slow, slower and slower. and slower. The footage went on for over 3 hours. He never once stopped descending. Everyone's eyes were glued to the screen. My chief fast forwarded the footage. My partner just kept going, kept steadily descending. It wasn't until the timestamp reached 2 hours and 23 minutes that the footage began to change. He started stripping. At first, it was his belt, his gun, cuffs, taser, etc. But then it was his shoes, then his socks, then his pants and underwear. He never spoke a word. He just kept slowly undressing every 10 minutes or so as he descended further down the staircase. As we watched, my chief instructed a few of my coworkers to go check out the warehouse. They did as they were told, as the rest of us continued watching. The footage went on for another 40 minutes or so before my partner removed his vest, which included his body camera. The camera captured one last sign of him as he continued descending, completely nude. Then we were left alone in the darkness. My chief decided to check in on the boys he sent to that warehouse, but all they could tell him was that it was desolate and abandoned. No way in, no hidden door, no impossible staircase. But I know they're lying. Either that or they didn't do their job properly. Because, as I'm writing this, I'm standing at that exact door my partner saw, staring down at the seemingly endless dark staircase. And even if it's the last thing I do, I will find him. I don't remember how I got here. Everything feels hazy, just like a dream. People dressed in white clothes are running around here and there. A man standing out front is calling out people's names, and they are stepping forward. I can't feel anything. As I walk, I can't even feel the ground beneath me. It feels as though we are walking on a cloud. I want to get out of here, I told the man. Whatever your issue is, go and tell him, he replied, pointing towards someone else. That man was sitting at a desk stacked with numerous books. People would come up to ask him something, he would answer, and then they would leave. I walked over to him. I need to get out of here. Okay, the man at the desk said. He called out to another person. Take him to the stairs. All right, come with me, the other person said. I stopped him and asked the man at the desk, where do these stairs lead? They will take you to your destination, he said, speaking as if it was something I should already know. What kind of destination? I asked him. He placed his pen down on the desk, leaned back comfortably with his hands folded, and asked for my name. Roger. Roger, you have passed away. What rubbish. I remember being tucked in my bed. This is just a dream. That is only how it feels to you. This is reality. But I don't remember anything like that happening. He said nothing. How is this possible? How could I die? That is the one piece of knowledge that God has not given to human beings. This can't be happening. I'm just unable to wake up. Look, you have passed away now. You have to accept this. No, I need to go back to my family. You can't. Do one thing. You people beat me. Beat me as much as you can. I am sure I will wake up. We cannot do that. I stand my ground right there, refusing to move forward. Later, when a huge crowd gathers and they reason with me at length, I am forced to get up. Before moving forward, I turn back and ask the man, when will I be able to see them again? When their time comes, they will be here. Go inside. You will become intoxicated with bliss. You won't have a care for anyone. And that is exactly what happens to everyone. Without saying another word, I turn away and walk toward the stairs. You won't have a care for anyone? The words echo like a curse in my chest. I told myself, it's a dream, Roger. How do you wake up from a dream? Whenever there's a loud noise or something shocks us, a familiar voice or pain, he leaves me near a staircase. There will be 2 doors up there. From one, a cold breeze will blow, and from the other, a warm one. You must go into the cold one. I climbed the moving staircase. At the top stood 2 doors. A cold breeze drifted from one. From the other came a steady warmth, like sunlight through my bedroom window. I stood between them for a long moment. This is just a dream. Maybe I have been here before. I just don't remember. I cannot leave my little girl and my wife all alone. This is a dream. I don't want to become just a dream. Whatever dreams I had built, I won't let them vanish. I will wake up. I stood there. Before me, two doors, one with a silent, cold breeze, and the other with a gentle warmth. If there was even the slightest chance this was a dream, I couldn't afford to make the wrong choice. And so I marched straight into the gates of hell. I live alone, the hair in the shower. I have tried removing the hair by force, but pulling on it did not work. It is ungiving. I find it hard to pull on the hair for more than a few seconds at a time because the shower drain smell is getting to be overwhelming. I have contacted my landlord, but he denies knowledge or involvement and puts the onus on me to resolve the issue. I find myself thinking of the hair throughout the day, imagining what exactly it might be. Black strands of spider silk is a favorite, and I often dream of a massive spider scrunched up in the pipes of my apartment. Apartment, a key word. There are many others in this building. Could hair, too thick to be flushed, have made its way to my drain? Perhaps a drunk lady once mistook my apartment for her own and broke in, showering off the alcohol. But my lock has not been forced. Hair may sometimes sprout out of a tumor. This is a fear of mine. At times, then, I think of the whole building as a body and my apartment as a tumor growing hair now as it advances. This is an omen, I've convinced myself, a sign just for me. I have been getting older and hair has begun to grow where it didn't before. Am I instructed to use the time remaining to me wisely? Am I dying? Why would an omen be so vague? The showers in this building are somehow connected through the pipes. I noticed this a long time ago. If someone sings in the shower, ghostly echoes haunt the other tenants. Stringed instruments seem to be the rule: guitar, violin, piano, etc. Even our vocal cords are indeed chords. The shower drain, or rather the pipe then, could function as a throat, the hair as its cords. I mention this only because I have heard ghostly music coming from the pipes that I have not heard before. But new tenants, fresh voices move in and out all the time. I have not flossed much since the hair showed up. I've thought about moving out, but I've lived here too long, and my roots are inextricably entwined with the building's foundations. In the worst of my imaginings, a bowstring, taut and steely, thwacks the forearm of a mighty god. I do not see the arrow, in fact I don't believe it was ever there, but the sound of the string is a piercing projectile itself. I am not suicidal, but recently the thought of hanging myself has often crossed my mind, not as a plan to be enacted, but as a symbol. There are many symbols in this world. A boy was giving a speech, and everyone started booing him. I honestly can't even describe it. It was just unbearable to listen to. Then another guy came up and started singing. People literally began pulling at their ears and banging their heads. Watching performance after performance like this, some people actually fainted from hitting their heads so much, while many others just fled from the school. The teachers looked incredibly embarrassed. Finally, the principal came up on stage and announced that it was the last performance. The crowd started cheering with joy and shaking hands. Thank goodness it's over, the students sighed. I thought to myself, wow, what a wonderful farewell gift the school has given us. But then the principal spoke again. That was the last official performance, but if anyone else wants to showcase their talent or has something they'd like to say, they are welcome to come forward. The students immediately took off their shoes and slippers, holding them in their hands. Whoever dared to go up next was going to get thrashed. Just then, a thin, scrawny boy stood up. He was dressed in black clothes and wore several thick beaded amulets around his neck. Who are you? Even the principal asked, completely bewildered by who this was. Raghav, he replied. We were all confused. Was this the same Raghav we thought had left the school? He never used to look like this. I overheard some people whispering that he was an extremely bizarre kid who used to carry strange insects and bugs in his school bag, so everyone always kept their distance from him. He announced that he was going to dance. Everyone actually wanted to see this. What could the boy who was ignored by the entire school possibly do? He was carrying a sack from which he pulled out a coconut and then tossed the sack aside. Smash! He cracked the coconut open right there on the stage. The principal literally jumped in shock and scrambled off the stage. All right then, Raghav said, and began moving his arms and legs in bizarre, unnatural ways. Don't you want any music? The principal asked. No need for that, he replied while dancing, and then he started chanting a song, left hand in, right hand out. He would lift his knees, bend one arm, and thrust the other out, continuously singing, I will leave from here, only me, only me. The people who had been holding their shoes put them back on. The crowd that had been so annoyed just moments ago began to laugh, and despite myself, I started laughing too. Even while everyone laughed, not once did he look embarrassed. There was no joy on his face. It looked as though he was releasing years of bottled up rage, as if this wasn't a dance at all, but some kind of dark ritual. Someone in the crowd laughed. He's still that insect boy. A few others laughed with him. Left hand in, right hand out. I will leave from here. Only me, only me. Then he spun around, bent over, wiggled his hips, and cried out, Say boogie woogie bo! A wet, muffled sound echoed through the courtyard. An unbearable stench spread through the air. At first, people laughed. Then they began coughing. What is that smell? Students covered their noses. A teacher stumbled backward, rubbing his eyes. The principal frowned and took a step away from Raghav. Well, that was my performance. Thank you for finally watching me, he said, pausing. And now, goodbye. My skin, someone whispered. Red patches spread across his hands. Another student screamed that his fingers felt like wax left in the sun. Another student clawed at his neck. It's burning! A teacher tried to wipe the red marks away, but skin peeled off with his fingers. It became hard for us to even see what was happening around us through the haze. Suddenly, we heard the principal's voice as he was standing closest to him. His scream was cut short, dissolving like water. Immediately, screams erupted all around me. I looked and saw my girlfriend screaming. I rushed toward her. We both reached our hands out to each other, but before I could grasp her hand, she melted away. All around the courtyard, nothing was left of the people but piles of empty clothes. Then, I felt an intense, agonizing, burning sensation, as if I had been thrown directly into a roaring fire. My body sagged. Flesh was slipping from my bones like candle wax. Through the chaos, I looked up and saw him standing right in the center, smiling. Thanks everyone for watching. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel.